Arena shooters are always a mixed bag for me. On one hand, it's a pretty simple concept to get a hold of. There's no end game to worry about, and no one is likely going to treat the level that you reached as a measure of content experienced. On the other, there really isn't that much to talk about, and they don't often break the norms in terms of gameplay, making more and more people wonder why I just don't look at Team Fortress 2. However, some companies can be far more inventive with the genre than just making online-only COD clones by adding a bit of uniqueness and style. I looked at Brickforce because it had a fun voxel building mechanic. I looked at Loadout because it played up the sophomoric violence and humor while offering up a very interesting weapon customization system. I looked at Fear Online because it won the Halloween poll, and I still have not forgiven you for that. So, when a Raid Leader patron suggested I look at this game, I figured it was finally time. And I feel I may have been too late. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at S4 League. S4 League is an anime-styled arena shooter focused on flashy action combat and stylish visuals. S4 actually stands for something. Try not to laugh here. Stylish Esper Shooting Sports. Yes, the S in Esper is awkwardly capitalized to fit the stupid forced initialism. Did I mention this game is Korean yet? Developed by NeoWiz and published by Area, this game used to be under the control of Pro7stat1. If you had an account with them, you may be able to use that login with it in a separate login section on the launcher. No more stalling, it's time I show you my S4. For those of you that played the game during the game's late 2007 to early 2008 launch window, things have not changed much graphically. Models look very blocky, especially on the faces, and textures are low-res with lots of 2D work to simulate foliage, and animation quality is a bit choppy. Really, it sorta works in this game. While it does show the developers haven't spent much time updating the looks for a modern audience, each piece fits together cohesively enough that it has a decent overall aesthetic. Effects quality is much of the same, with a few bright flashes for specific attacks like the Countersword's uppercut or the Sigma Blade's transformation, and the standard impact debris from rockets and gunfire. These effects often travel through objects and geometry, so don't be surprised if you notice giant light shows coming through the walls. The maps feel really barren, partly because the game was originally designed around rapid movement and quick acrobatic leaps from walls, but as it stands now, it serves to highlight just how flat and empty everything feels. The major exception that comes to mind is the lone map available for the Warframe mode, but we'll get to that soon. Really, the point of all this is don't go in expecting anything to really catch your eye, as the game looks and feels very dated. It's a shame no time was spent bringing this game out of 2008, isn't it? Music for S4 League runs the gamut. Some of it's energetic, fast, and impactful, while other tracks are disjointed K-pop, or more accurately in some cases, K-rap. Feel free to call it crap, as it seems that whenever vocals kick into some of the songs, the quality of the piece just plummets, and lines and phrases are just overpronounced or repeated far too often. It's a pity, because from what I've been told, the soundtrack was held in very high regard, and even players who loved it when they first played it mentioned how much they just don't like many of the tracks that are playing now. There's still quite a few catchy gems, but some of the songs just really lose their punch when a vocal track shows up. Sound is almost completely overpowering when you start out, so feel free to hit the sound options quickly. What you will notice about the sounds, besides their volume, is that they're just kinda generic. Nothing ever really stood out as an exception, and while everything felt adequate for what the game was trying to convey, the fact that so many different weapons and attacks weren't over the top was a bit of a letdown. You'll quickly become aware of some of the terrible voice acting, and you should definitely prepare yourself for a barrage of critical, critical, repeated ad nauseum and in rapid succession. Honestly, it wouldn't be of note if it weren't being spammed all the time, and really driving home the insane repetitiveness of some of the game modes. Once you've installed, patched, and started the game, the very first thing you might notice is that there is no text on any of the buttons, and most of the menus are also blank. If this does happen, you first must exit the game, look underneath the launcher, select the flag that best represents your chosen language from the launcher, and start the game up again. If you don't, the game doesn't bother putting any language in the game, and you get that weird blank text bug. As we all know, choosing to install the game in your chosen language means you don't necessarily speak that language, right? The game is prone to freezing and crashing, so expect to meet that area launcher sign-in often. This seems odd, given an engine this old shouldn't be this poorly optimized, and you'll often see the entire game freeze for a moment when the big enemy spawn renders in. It might not happen as often for some people as it does for others, but be prepared for it should you wish to play. Once you're fully in-game, having set your nationality and chosen one of the labeled servers from a small list, you'll be brought to the main lobby and quickly notice just how cluttered it all is. The left side of the screen is primarily dominated by your character, which also makes up the equipment screen. The right side of the screen changes based on what tab along the top row you select and shows the game lobby itself once you find or create a match. In order to exit a selected tab, you have to hit the back arrow icon at the top right. The game plays out generally as you would expect. Left-click to fire a weapon, right-click to use its alternate attack, if available, double-click to sprint, and shift to use a skill. You will not believe how many times those last two have gotten myself and others in Grindstone killed in the middle of combat, because I'd quickly forget that skills were shift instead of trying to hit tab or Q. At the same time, I'd often hit shift on accident instead of double-clicking to sprint. Of these skills, Shield seems to be the most useful, with others being Cloak, a skill that's surprisingly easy to see, Detect, which lets you send players' locations to all your teammates and see cloaked players, Flight, which does exactly what it says on the tin, Block, which places a wall in front of you when it's used, Anchoring, which shoots out a chain and then pulls you toward it atop a hoverboard, Metallic, which causes you to reenact the Terminator arrival sequence as you turn into metal and reflect all damage at the cost of being immobile, and finally Binding, which is an aimed skill that roots a player in place should it hit. A rather interesting and appreciated feature not often seen in these sort of arena shooters is the ability to try out every weapon and skill in the game before choosing to buy them. There is another positive effect of this weapon testing, as doing so with all weapon classes will result in some free loot. There is, however, this constant elephant in the room. You see, foreign companies often don't want to pay the additional cost for proper localization into different languages. I guarantee American companies have the same standards in other languages, but oh man will you not believe the sheer levels of English within this game. While this isn't much of a problem in an arena shooter, it tends to be unintentionally hilarious during the game's story when it's trying so desperately to be taken seriously. You may be wondering, this arena shooter actually has a story? Well, the answer is sort of. One of the game modes is called Scenario, a mini-campaign of 8 missions that are designed to give you a bit of background about the world and the characters within it. Unfortunately, it's also one of the single most repetitive modes, with the first 3 missions taking place on the exact same map, in a tiny area cluttered with bushes and trees that hinder your ability to fight. This is where everything starts to fall apart. As you move from training yourself against waves of robots to beating up some egotistical jerk's all-girl fan club, you'll notice that the tone that they were going for is just all over the place. It doesn't help that the dialogue, as mentioned before, is so stilted as to render scenes of serious drama into moments of lung-rending laughter. Oh, that storyline also ends with a "to be continued." Yeah, I can totally see that happening. The other game modes are certainly better off in comparison, but that's not saying too much. The second available PvE mode is Conquest, which, despite what its name suggests, is actually just a rather generic horde mode. The reason it rates higher than Scenario is simply the fact that both modes are about fighting waves of enemies. Conquest just has the decency to load once and never have a cutscene. Conquest is also a mode steeped in frustration, as your character doesn't receive invulnerability frames from taking damage, and thus can be stun-locked to death from a single hit, a favored tactic of the Knight, Bishop, and Queen spawns in this mode. Also factor in that ammo is limited to all but melee weapons, only certain enemies will drop ammo, and it takes entire clips to fight off anything but the weakest enemies, and you can even be forced to lose the match if you run out of ammo before finishing off the snipers that are standing on background blocks, as they can only be attacked with ranged weaponry. While there are other modes, they're better discussed within community as the game primarily focuses on PvP rather than these two cooperative PvE modes. From what I've been told from many veteran players, this game is a shadow of its former self. It was requested by a raid leader who chose it simply due to fond memories with the title, and who had wondered how the game was currently faring. Whether it's nostalgia working in this game's favor, or it was always this way, I have no personal way of knowing, but from many of the players in Grindstone who were highly looking forward to get back into this game, that joy died hard and fast as we began to play. I was hearing how the weapons felt sloppier, the movement felt more sluggish, the arenas more empty, and the combat just overall felt less enjoyable than they had recalled. Only copious amounts of alcohol would improve our mood when playing. Granted, that fun was mostly had in PvP matches, so let's just get into it. One thing will become clear rather quickly is that this community is very small, with all servers showing small bars of activity and almost no one in any of the chat channels. Server list also seems to have been weighted oddly. Developers might have intentionally made it so empty servers still display a small amount of activity to make people think that there's others playing. This does appear to be true, as once you get even 4 people joining the same server, the bar increases, and without those players, the servers all hover at the exact same activity. Even with such a small community, you'll still find the usual obnoxious go 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 kiddies, and those that try to give you a step-by-step tutorial on how to ready up so they can get to the game faster. Really, this game improves immensely if you bring a group of friends and can enjoy laughing at one another in the game's faults rather than just playing alone. Let's touch upon the various PvP modes included in the game. Some of these modes have a halftime where you need to watch some dancing robots while you wait for the match to start again. First off, there's Touchdown, a capture the flag style mode where you grab a ball and head toward the enemy base to score a goal. Alternatively, you can place the ball into your own goal to reset the ball position back to the center. Those possessing the ball will have their SP drain, cutting down their skills and mobility as long as they can hold the ball. Siege is your basic point capture mode. 3 points are scattered around the map and can only be captured by having a team member stand in the area. An odd quirk with this is that if you're capturing and you step outside of the capture zone, the status resets itself completely instead of just slowly going back down. Long story short, don't step out of the zone when you're capturing. Deathmatch it's a team deathmatch. I don't really need to say anything beyond that. Just rack up the kills on the enemy players and the team with the most kills will win the match. Chaser is one of 2 free-for-all modes, although Chaser is more of a you versus everyone else mode. In Chaser, you or a random player gets possessed by a Reaper that will vastly improve health and attack power. Those who have become the Chaser will have a target assigned to them, but can attack any other player. You get twice as many points for killing your assigned targets in order, while the rest of the players can still attack you. Otherwise, you can kill whoever you want. Non-Chaser players are going to get points if they survive the round, or kill the Chaser before a new Chaser is assigned. Battle Royal is the other free-for-all mode. Yes, I'm aware this is normally spelled and pronounced Royale, but in a game where the tutorial contains the phrase, "I have provided a weapon, so teach that cheeky a lesson," you can't expect them to have researched all the terms properly. It's pretty much a standard deathmatch, except there are no teams. When one player takes the point lead, they'll get a tracking target on them. If you kill that player, you get a larger amount of points. When the point leader changes, so does the target. It's a fun dichotomy in that being in first place is both a major detriment and the ultimate goal. Captain is team deathmatch with a twist. In Captain, all players are assigned Captain status, with crowns appearing above their head. All captains have boosted health, but the second they're killed in this status, they lose it and the enemy team gains a point. The goal is to be the team with the most captains remaining once it's over. There's a mode labeled Practice. You kill turrets in it. That's it. Really, I don't see any other reason to play this mode, as AI bots in a PvE mode will be a far more interesting and challenging fight. The final game mode, Warfare, sounds the most interesting on paper, but it doesn't really work as well in action. The idea? 2 teams on opposing ends of the map are guarding their respective bases, defending 2 sniper tower bishops and 1 sniper queen. Take out the enemy queen, and you win. The problem? The map is tiny and the bots are ridiculously easy to avoid. So much so that there's a safe spot on the map where each team can freely stand to take out the bishops and queen without them being able to retaliate at all. It was probably our least favorite mode just for the pure tedium and ease of exploitation. If at any time in the match lobby you find your teams a bit lopsided, or you just want other players to be on your team without having to ask people to shuffle around voluntarily, there's a Shuffle Team button available if you're the group leader. However, this rarely seems too reliable, only shifting over 1 or 2 members. Occasionally you'll be hit with a bug that claims you can't reshuffle the teams again for 3 seconds, no matter how long you've waited to do it. One major issue with the community at large was far more prevalent during the game's heyday, but from what I've been led to understand, is still a pretty common problem. Hackers. Hackers everywhere. Have you or your team ever unloaded an entire clip into someone and not seen their health go down 1 bit? Ever been taken out far too quickly by a gun that would otherwise be useless? Ever been shot by someone on the other side of the map through several walls? It's pretty likely they were hacking. Sure, some of these things might be attributed to bad connection or netcoding. Plenty of times I'd seen team members running endlessly into a wall while they were taking no damage from people firing on them, only to find out that they were disconnected. However, the most telling aspect of this is confirmed with a simple Google search. Go ahead and type S4 League and wait for the auto search results to come up. I guarantee you S4 League hacks will be one of the first results you get. That's never a good sign. However, you might not need to ever resort to hacks if you're willing to invest. Oh, yes, it's one of those games. I really hate saying this, but I think I was a little harsh to Fear Online's cash shop. As I said on Twitter shortly after making that review, Aerie removed the boosts on the cash shop weaponry, and did exactly what I was hoping they would do. They made the weapon stats equivalent to the player point weapons, gave them a fancy pattern, and let you override the level requirement. Sure, the better characters are still there, but the weapons are no longer a question of paid supremacy. I wish I could say the same about this game. There are equivalent player point weapons for every item, identical in fire rate, reload time, and even basic stats, but what you need to keep an eye on is the stat on the bottom. On player point weapons it reads 1% attack power bonus. On the cash shop weapons equivalent, 10% boost. That's a major difference. Factor in the same kind of advantages from owning gear, like having far higher bonus defense or boosted health. Since this game's headshot or weak point system doesn't result in any sort of instant kill, these advantages to health, power, or defense can easily be the deciding factor in a match of players with similar skill. The game is really fond of giving you player points, and you'll get more than you'd ever think you'd need, and if you play through the various tutorials. You can also earn random capsules that might give you goodies, upgrade your weapons and armors with small amounts of player points to add bonuses to it, including a random chance game that might drop some really good or interesting items. However, most of the weapons and gear pieces you'll find are rentals, purchasable in chunks of time ranging from 1 to 30 days, all depending on the piece. There are permanent items that you can find and unlock, but this brings in a repair mechanic which luckily won't have to worry about with a rental. All in all, investing a bit of money in this game can seriously increase your survival, and that is never a good thing in a PvP-focused game. If you do play this game, you might want to keep this game to a friends-only status just to keep it honest. I might have waited far too long to look at this game. I was hesitant to play it due to the stories of rampant hacking, and any title that gets a ton of suggestions from players who remember it fondly is almost asking for trouble. I implore anyone who does have fond memories of this game, who are actually angry at what I've been saying, to do one thing. Play it again. Play it right now. I found that everyone who was telling me how much they couldn't wait to get back into it didn't really have that same enthusiasm when they started playing it. Seriously, check it out for yourself and make absolutely certain this is still the game you remember. If you have no history, I really can't suggest that you start unless you have a bunch of friends willing to come along for the ride. Here's my final rating. While arena shooters either go for realism or bring the focus to the gunplay and the demographic of gunplay fans, S4 goes for the anime-loving crowd with flashy moves, over-the-top weapons, and bright, colorful arenas. As an arena shooter, it's very easy to grasp the gameplay. Just point at the enemy and fire away. Those with better skills succeed better, but most anyone should be able to understand the game's style with just a few minutes of play. There are plenty of modes, especially in PvP, to change up the way the game plays, and while the quality of modes varies a bit, I honestly think you should avoid warfare at all costs, there are a lot of different ways to play, and that's all most people want to see from an arena shooter. Any investment made in the game will improve your character for generally little cash. While many of the weapons and armors are purchasable with player points, all cash-out point purchases are unquestionably better, and will likely net you easier victories if you have even the most basic handle on gameplay. Of course, the majority of items you can purchase are rentals only, so keep in mind most investments won't last more than a month at a time. While there are permanent items to earn, they're not overly common, and definitely not something you're likely to find in the cash shop. Whatever this game used to feel like, it sure doesn't feel like it anymore. Moving around and even running comes across as slow and sluggish. Whether players in 2008 were convinced this game was fast because there was no good standard to hold it to, or whether it was artificially slowed down when the publisher changed hands, I can't say. But I can say that this game's age really shows. Translations are terrible, systems feel badly coded and out of date. It feels like a mess. Of course, the major concern of running into a public match only to be trounced by someone whose skill is defined by a background script they're running is disheartening at the least, and no fun for anyone looking for an honest experience. Evidence of this is prevalent in the PvE time attack and kill count training modes, where the high score tables are littered with players who've achieved times and kill totals that are physically impossible to get through normal means. The number one clan in the game has over 1,000 members, and both the clan and the guild leader of the clan are nothing more than a jumble of letters and numbers. The fact that the publisher has done nothing to correct any of this shows how little care is given to the game anymore. Finally, any cash shop featuring weapons and armors that are unquestionably better if you pay for them reeks of pay-to-win status. While your shooter skills will provide a better chance for victory, having even the slightest edge in a firefight can equal victory. And if paying for that edge can grant you first place, that's paying to win. Keep this one between friends or just be prepared to deal with that. Next time, a Patreon raid leader suggestion has me looking at something that I swore I would never look at. And if I think I'm still getting flack for the Mabinogi and Archade reviews, I've got one hell of a world of hurt ahead of me. Views aren't worth delusional fanboy rage. They really aren't. Oh, you actually stuck around this time. Really don't have anything at the end of this. Actually, I have one idea. Now, you gotta keep this secret. I don't want to hear everyone talking about the thing in the comments of this video, because I don't know why the hell you all do that. But basically, just keep one thing quiet, and you'll get your clue. Oh, and that clue? You've been listening to it this entire time.